Recording in progress.
Good evening and welcome to this council meeting. A particular welcome to all councillors present and online, and to those members of the public joining us in the gallery, and to those of you watching on the webcast. Before we begin, I'll call on Councillor Santa to give the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of all present and those watching on webcast, we acknowledge the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of this land, and we pay our respects to the elders, past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Australia. We must always see to it that in our discussions in this council, we recognise the unique place in and role of our First Nations people in the formation of this country. And we must also ensure that with respect to our Indigenous fellow citizens, we observe the principles of respect and consultation.
Thank you. We have a request from Councillor Lamb to attend tonight's council meeting remotely. Councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that we, Councillor Lamb, be permitted to attend the council meeting remotely.
Seconded by Councillor Spenceley. Put that to the meeting. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Councillors, council staff and members of the public are reminded to ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during the meetings of the council, and councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. The minutes of confirmation of minutes, is there a mover? Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Mutton. I put the item, all those in favour, and that's carried unanimously. We've had a request for to address council on item 10.5, the planning proposal for 121 to 125 Holt Avenue, Cremorne. Councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we open the public forum for that item, allowing the public to address the council and then bring the item forward following the mayoral minutes.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Santa, put that to the meeting. All those in favour? Those against? That again is carried unanimously. That takes us to the first of the mayoral minutes. Mayoral minute 1 relates to noise pollution. You would see that I tabled 2 letters from residents in McMahon's Point raising concerns about increasing noise, and certainly as you all know, increasing traffic generation, increased construction, and particularly the impacts of the major state government infrastructure projects are having an impact on health and wellbeing within our community. The Environment Reference Group considered the first of those representations from the public, and it recommended at that last meeting on the 5th of March to ask council to lobby the state government, because much of the noise regulation relates to the EPA and to those noise guidelines, but also for council to review its own policies and conditions of consent and compliance regime. Certainly these 2 gentlemen are not the first, and they won't be the last of our residents to raise these concerns. Notably, one of the residents is a quite well-known acoustic expert, and that's why when he wrote to me with those suggestions about how to address noise more generally, I thought it was worth bringing to you and council exploring. And so on that basis, I move that council strongly advocate to the state government to address increasing noise pollution through a review of the EPA guidelines, adoption of electric public transport vehicles and power tools in urban areas. amongst other things, and that council undertake a review of the standard noise conditions of consent for both construction period and general operation. Council did undertake a review of its standard conditions of consent relating to noise, I think almost 10 years ago, and certainly things have changed since then. And so I commend the motion to you. Are there any speakers? I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. This brings us to a second issue that really relates to the impacts of the Warringah Freeway upgrade and Western Harbour Tunnel works. I've had numerous, and I'm sure you all have, almost daily representations from people along the whole of the corridor about the impacts of the construction, not least about on-street parking, and those range from Camaray down through Bent Street and Lower Bent Street, Alfred Street North through to Whaling Road. And whilst council's public projects liaison officer works with both the community and the contractors and Transport for New South Wales, and council has raised on numerous occasions issues about the compliance with the conditions of consent, which I've listed in the mayoral minute, that relate to reducing the impacts, particularly around parking and construction traffic management. It remains an ongoing bleeding sore that's impacting our community. And so I was approached most recently by a group of residents in Alfred Street North and also a group of residents in Bent Street. Some of those residents in Bent Street are parking on the other side of Forsyth Park and bringing prams and shopping across, and because they're being parked out by construction workers. And their frustration is partly with council's processes, because in the ordinary course of things, council undertakes a survey of residents and then determines whether or not to change parking times and parking regime. And I have wrestled with this for the last year about whether we ought to suspend it just in the corridor, just for that period of the construction, in order to allow some discretion to council staff to respond and manage particular areas in order to prioritise resident access to on-street parking. And so for those reasons, I recommend that council do that, suspend the ordinary parking regime just along that corridor for the term of the construction period only, to allow discretion in managing parking in the construction corridor, and that we state absolutely that it's with the specific purpose of prioritising resident, pedestrian and vehicular access and prioritising on-street parking for residents, and that we continue to monitor the impacts and liaise with Transport for New South Wales and their contractors to address the impacts on residents and compliance with the relevant conditions of consent. Is there any discussion? I put that item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. This next one is a really lovely thing, which is that Greenway celebrates 70 years on the 28th of March, and it is an important and historic milestone for what was, when it was first built, one of the largest public housing projects, well, certainly the largest public housing project and the largest group of residential flat buildings in the Southern Hemisphere. It was built at a time of a really intense housing crisis in the immediate post-World War II period. And it seems fitting that as we are engaged in yet the next worst housing crisis since that time, that we should mark and celebrate the importance of Greenway to our community. I was approached by the Greenway Tenants Association for council to provide assistance, and The assistance in particular that they have asked for is that council pay for a person to provide a welcome to country for their celebration event. We discussed ways of marking it more permanently, and that's why for the second recommendation, I've mentioned that council commission an artist to work with the Greenway tenants and the broader local community to produce a public artwork celebrating Greenway to be located on the Ennis Road retaining wall on Broughton Street, and that council's existing public art budget allocation pay for that. Councillor Welsh.
Yes, I'd like to allow me to take you on a journey through the rich history and vibrant community of Greenway. Situated by the iconic Sydney Harbour Bridge, Greenway was born from reclaimed land destined for access roads in the 1930s. Named after Australia's first architect, Francis Greenway, according to a newspaper clipping in the Greenway Common area, when the Housing Commission announced plans for 309 flats to be erected on the 2 3/4 acres of Milson's Point wasteland, irate citizens said it was a crazy scheme. Some said it would mar the beauty of the harbourfront. Others said the building would look like a jail, and still more claimed it would be a modern mass production of slums. Prominent people were invited to comment on the eyesore about to be erected, but the housing planners went on with the job and said it was their duty to supply homes for the people. The estate has witnessed waves of transformation and challenges. In 1954, it emerged as a beacon of modernity, offering all electric units to working people, fostering a thriving population. However, over time, shifts in housing allocation and societal changes reshaped its demographic, catering primarily to an aging and vulnerable population, including individuals recovering from mental illness. In the early 1980s, around the world, mental health patients that had been hospitalized were discharged to the community. If community care back then had been properly resourced, it could have been beneficial. But unfortunately, many of the mentally ill were left to fend for themselves, much like today, which is why I advocate for our library and community centers, because I feel they are our de facto mental health centers. Despite the struggles and perceptions of increased crime and social isolation, the community persisted. In 2004, the 50th anniversary celebrations sparked renewed engagement and collaboration, revitalizing interest in Greenway. Yet sustained momentum leading to periodic cycles of decline and rejuvenation. The turning point came with the emergence of a new generation of residents committed to community development. Through partnerships with local authorities and government agencies, they embarked on a journey of empowerment and resilience. From improving public spaces to launching health and well-being initiatives, the Greenway Tenants Group, You Go Bryce Gunn and the Greenway Tenants Association became a beacon of hope and inclusion. Multicultural outreach, including Mandarin language services, further enriched the community tapestry. Through grassroots efforts and external support, Greenway blossomed into a hub of activity and support from computer donations to community gardening. The spirit of collaboration and innovation thrived. The community gardens are well cared for, and the men's shed is a carpenter's dream. Oz Harvest delivers food twice weekly, and a car and bus are available to drive residents to appointments. As we mark the 70th anniversary, let us celebrate the resilience and unity of Greenway. Let us honor the past while embracing the future with optimism and determination. Together, we can continue to build a community where every voice is heard, every need is met, and every individual thrives. I support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Yes, I had a question. Thanks, Mayor. So at the end of last year, I put forward a notice of motion about cleaning up the edges of Greenway along Ennis Road, and I noticed that's just been done. So could I, and I was wondering how we managed to get that done so quickly, and how do we organise that? And it looks fantastic. It's made a huge difference to the streetscape because it has been the biggest mess for years and years and years. So I just wanted to congratulate staff that obviously took my notice of motion on board and and proceeded to get that work done quickly. It looks so much better. So was that council staff? Can I ask the general manager, was that council staff?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that was, I believe that was St George Community Housing.
Good, so we lobbied them to get in there and do it, yeah. So it just looks so much better, and how lovely to have that work done in time for the celebration. I've certainly been at other celebrations down at Greenway. I've been going to celebrations there for like 25 years now. And it's a lovely little community down there. And it's surprising how long people stay there and become part of the community. You know, there's several residents there that are part of our coffee group in the morning at Kirribilli Village. And the residents that live in Greenway they really integrate into village life, and important. All those residents are very important residents in Kirribilli, and are very valued by the small businesses and other residents. So it certainly is an exciting celebration, and I'm really glad that the streetscape looks so much better in time for this celebration.
Thank you. Councillor Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll briefly thank Councillor Welsh for her words. They were lovely, encouraging, and a reminder of how important it is that in times of housing crisis, that people step up and provide housing for the vulnerable, and that everybody needs to be part of the community. We need everyone from all demographics, and it would be nice if we had many people as brave today as they were back then. But thank you for that lovely, lovely speech. If everyone could just make sure that they do go down and have a look at the exhibition. I think it's a really important thing for people of the whole North Sydney local government area to go and familiarise themselves with how it came about and the history of community, and how community activism can actually do wonderful things. So thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for the mayoral minute.
If there are no other speakers, I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. I'll turn now to mayoral minute 4, which was a late item. The reason for it being that the letter that was attached to it from Kylie Tink's office arrived late after hours on Friday last. But I thought it was important to bring it before you as soon as possible. I'm going to read the mayoral minutes so that you are up to date, Councillor Gibson. You are all no doubt aware of the landmark case of Sharma and Minister for Environment, which was the appeal where young people went to the federal court to try to establish a duty of care of decision makers to the next generation to protect them from the harm of climate change. And if they were initially successful on appeal, that was overturned. A very inspirational group of young people from around Australia, led by Anjali Sharma, who was the first of the litigants in the case. And as a response to that appeal, and because of exceptional lobbying by a group of young people, Senator David Pocock has proposed a bill called the Duty of Care Bill. And the purpose of it is to add 2 conditions to a number of 6 existing pieces of legislation, including the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act. And that is to require decision makers to consider the impact of decisions that could harm the climate or health and well-being of the current and future children of Australia, and to prevent decisions that would harm the climate if the decision poses a material risk of harm to the health and well-being of the current and future children of Australia. Now, we're all familiar with that because under Section 8, capital A2 of the Local Government Act, we as decision makers must apply a number of principles, not least that which is C, council should consider the long-term and cumulative effects of actions on future generations. Our community strategic plan recognises climate change is a threat to the future of our community and requires action by all levels of governments. We have an objective in that community strategic plan that requires us to work to increase awareness of biodiversity conservation through education and community partnerships. Council's Environmental Sustainability Strategy 2030 includes that North Sydney community actively looks after the environment for current and future generations, making sure that North Sydney remains clean and healthy. Kylie Tink wrote to propose that Council partner with her office on a joint event promoting the work of the Duty of Care campaign, which seeks to encourage young Australians to be mindful of their opportunities to advocate for intergenerational equity. The event that she proposes is entitled Stand Up and Rock Out, to be held in St Leonard's Park on the 19th of May. The event is consistent with this council's commitment to and declaration of a climate emergency from 2019, and a number of strategies and policies. Kylie Tink's office has asked that council waive the park hire fee, that this is the form of the partnership it's set out in the letter, provide technical support, PA, waste management, promotion, crowd control support by equipment such as bollard signs and even high-vis vests, and that we would jointly be responsible for public insurance liability. I propose that we should support the event, not least that it's expected to attract young people from throughout our local government area and those adjoining, and that the support for the event be funded from the existing events budget.
Can I ask a question, Mayor? How much is it? We've got a rough idea of how much this will cost? Any idea at all? We're being asked to vote on something with no idea of the cost.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the cost would be largely in kind, and I'd suggest minimal and within the events budget.
Okay.
Councillor Berricky.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this mayoral minute. It is absolutely important that it come to council. It's entirely consistent with council's position, and it is something that it's amazing when you look at what the Local Government Act already does, and the rest of the acts of every other level of government are catching up to the Local Government Act. So that's good to see. Maybe we'll see a bit more engagement with the community on other decisions like local government does. This is not just a great opportunity, but I think it's also incumbent on us to support and be part of it, and to make sure that our community actually does look after its environment and considers the impacts of the decisions made today on the future generations. It's something that we think should be done in any case, but it's important that we remind people that when you make your decision, it's not just for now, it's for future generations and the ones to come. So thank you for bringing it to our attention, and I support the mayoral minute.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Mutton.
Thank you, Mayor. The thinking behind this minute, I support entirely, but I'm just a little uncomfortable when we partner with a federal politician. I think it would be different if we were partnering with politicians at large, but to do in effect a joint venture with a particular politician puts us, I think, in the position of advocacy for that politician's cause. So that's why I'm uncomfortable with it. So I don't propose to support it.
You've already spoken, Councillor Gibson.
No, I asked a question. I haven't spoken. I just asked a question.
Okay, Councillor Gibson.
I do concur. Look, for a start, I think these late mayoral minutes are problematic, and certainly when we have late ones, there should be a copy on our desk. We're not all at our computers all day. We're out and about in the community, and I think these late mayoral minutes, I think are often just not appropriate. But I have similar sentiments to Councillor Mutton, and look, you might call me a cynic, or you might just think I'm have a fair bit of political experience, but in an election year when we're probably going to have a federal election and we've got a local government election, for us to partner with this federal member is, look, people might just think there's a bit of politics at play here. They might just think that. They might think it is an election stunt. And I I can't agree. I can't agree with partnering with Kylie Tink. We have never done anything like this before. We've never, the mayor has never suggested we partner with our local Liberal state member. And this just seems to me opportunistic in an election year for both people concerned, and that makes me feel comfortable because it's a good cause. And I also don't know about just having a youth, just having youth attending. Why don't we make it broader? I think the mayor should probably do her own event and just have not just focus on youth, but I think this will be viewed by the community rather cynically in an election year. And I like the concept, but I can't vote with this because I think it's just politically motivated.
Are there any other speakers? I'll use my right of reply on that. Oh, sorry, councillor Spencer.
Thank you, Mayor. Good ideas come from anywhere. Just because a good idea comes from a politician that we may or may not necessarily align ourselves with individually doesn't make it any less of a good idea. It doesn't mean we don't want to engage our youth on what is, for them, the most important issues they face, the most important issues that my children face. This is something I'd like my son to attend. The fact that it comes from Kylie Tink is irrelevant to me. This is a great idea. This is great community engagement, and this is something this council should get behind. Ignore the politics of this and let's support a great idea.
Thank you. If there are no other speakers, I will shortly use my right of reply. I'll just concur with councillor Spenceley. There's a reason that it hasn't ever happened before, and that's because none of the other state or federal members have ever sought to partner with council for this. I know because the office of Ms Tink informed me that Lane Cove Council are falling over themselves to do it, and she preferred North Sydney because it's central and because of our commitment to climate action. So on that basis, the idea, the cynicism that was expressed by Councillor Gibson, which really impugns the motives of everyone involved, has to be rejected. This is timely because the bill is coming before the Parliament. Many of you would have read an exceptional article maybe in the Saturday paper about Anjali Sharma and the work that has gone in by really exceptional young people around the country to put this together. There is a generalised campaign which Kylie Tink is promoting, and engaging youth through music is a time-honoured way of making sure they turn up and are able to be reached. It's really good timing for us because we will have commenced our own community engagement on our informing strategies the week before, and no doubt as part of the partnership we'll be able to have a pop-up there to engage them on other matters to do with North Sydney more generally. So for all those reasons I urge you to support the motion. I put it to you, all those in favour, all those against. That is carried. We now come to the brought forward item 10.5, the planning proposal for 121 to 125 Holt Avenue, Cremorne. We have one registered speaker, Kathy Peters. If you would please come forward, Ms Peters, and address the council.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I should just correct the record. It's Catherine Clark.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I'm thinking of another precinct.
Yes, I know. We got a bit confused for each other. Thank you for allowing me to, on the precinct, to have a chat, sort of small talk to you today. We just wanted to say on behalf of the precinct committee, we would like to thank council for its continued support for this planning proposal, and also to the council staff for all their hard work they've put into it. We appear to be at the final stage of a very convoluted journey, which some of you may recall began in early 2021. As you are aware, the original planning proposal based on the earlier GML report proposed a total of 5 dwellings at between 115 and 123 Holt Avenue be listed as the Holt Avenue Group because they met the threshold for the local heritage listing. And similarly, 125 was to be was recommended for individual listing as a local heritage item. We note with great disappointment that the revised GML report did not consider a group listing because of the unfortunate demolition of the 3 dwellings at 115 to 119. While the revised PP now leaves 121 Holt Avenue without any protection from harm, we are mindful that the proposal needs to be progressed to its final stage without any further delay. So although disappointed, we accept that the planning proposal should proceed to Gateway without the inclusion of 121 Holt Avenue, and we commend the recommendations to you. And I'd like to thank you again for your support.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation, Ms Clark. Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Spenceley. Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. That's carried. And thank you. The recommendation has passed. That brings us back to the first item, where I will, the election of the Deputy Mayor. I will hand the chair over to the General Manager to conduct the election.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As at today or this evening's election, we only have one nomination for Deputy Mayor. That nomination was made by Councillor Zoe Baker and Councillor William Burke, and the councillor nominated is Councillor Godfrey Santa. On the basis of having no further nominations, I would declare that Councillor Godfrey Santa is elected Deputy Mayor until the end of this term.
Thank you. I would move a vote of thanks to Councillor Burke for his service in the role, and congratulations to Councillor Santa on your election. That now takes us to item 10.2, draft fees and charges schedule 2024. Is there a mover for the item?
I'm happy to move the recommendation, Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Berrigan, seconded by Councillor Welsh. Is there any discussion? Put the item, all those.
Can I just have one question?
Yes.
I've been looking at the costs or the increased costs, and it left me wondering what impact it would have on the Kirribilli Neighbourhood Centre, given the markets that it conducts every 4 weeks.
Madam Mayor, are you talking about the public events
Yep.
fees?
Yeah, the market.
The market.
The bi-monthly market.
There's a significant increase in the cost of food stalls and things like that.
Madam Mayor, I might have to take that specific question on notice and circulate an email to councillors. The recommendation is to put this on public exhibition, so we can look at that prior to the final adoption if there is a suggestion that it does have an impact.
It's just that Kirribilli Neighbourhood Centre is an example, delivers an incredibly good service, and I'd hate to see it financially injured because of these changes.
If there are no other questions or debate, I'll put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried with one against. 10.3, investment loan borrowings report as at 29 February 2024. Is there a mover? Councillor
The
Berrigan.
recommendation.
A seconder, Councillor Welsh. Any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. That takes us to 2024 elections, constitutional referendum and poll questions. Is there a mover for the move by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Lapouris? Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Draft administrative amendment to the North Sydney Development Control Plan 2013 post-exhibition report 10.6. Councillor Beregi.
I'll move the recommendation, Mayor.
Seconder, Councillor Santa. Any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Tree vandalism in North Sydney, response to council. Moved by Councillor Gibson.
Came from a notice of motion that I did, so I'm happy about that.
Moved by Councillor Gibson, seconded by Councillor Beregi. Is there any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Appointments to the North Sydney Council Disability Inclusion Committee. Councillor Beregi.
I'd like to move the recommendation, please, Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Welsh. Any discussion? Oh, Councillor Beregi, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank the council staff for their efforts in recruiting for the new Disability Inclusion Committee. As the chair of the committee, I did sit in and listen to the information sessions of people who were interested in joining. They were informative, it was engaging. There was a real commitment and hope that this committee really has some influence, and hopefully over time we won't need a committee. It will be just as part of the it will be so embedded in every bit of council's activities. But in the meantime, there's some fantastic ideas that are coming up organically from the community. They want to bring the ideas to the table, and it's really an exciting step forward in making sure that we have it as an action of council which delivers, not just a committee, but a committee that delivers. So thank you to council staff, if I can pass that on through the General Manager, for organising the groups, and I look forward to the committee meetings. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Not.
Just had a
Councillor
question.
Gibson.
What lengths did we go to? I'm just a bit concerned that that we don't have a youth representative or anyone from a multicultural background in this group. So I'm a bit puzzled as to how we didn't find someone from either of those groups, and what are we going to do to try to find representatives from those two important groups?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as you will see, that the maximum number of 10 committee members for this committee, and 2 spaces were held due to the fact that there wasn't any youth or multicultural that were considered to be put forward for the committee. So our access and inclusion coordinator is going to go out and try and find people in those groups to be able to put forward applications.
Yeah, I think that's important. So that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. 10.9, application for a reference group membership. Is there a mover? Councillor Beregi, seconded by Councillor Santa. Any discussion? Put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. 10.10, second quarter property portfolio report. Is there a mover? Councillor Santa, or a motion?
Yeah.
You want to amend the recommendation?
Amended the recommendation, sorry, ma'am.
You put that.
If I can read that, a new point 2, that given the current challenging financial circumstances for council and the local business community, a council report be prepared on possible ways of increasing revenues from council's property portfolio, while also expanding council support for local business to ensure both council and local business receive the maximum possible income benefit.
Is there a seconder for?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Gibson. Do you wish to speak to it?
If I may,
Yeah.
thank you. I just want to give some examples of where we could perhaps, then these are just perhaps thought bubbles by me, and so not definitive in any way, but for example, we could consider in the Coaloda Cafe extending the alfresco dining out to the green area across the way from the cafe, without inconveniencing passers-by. In Carradar Park, Waverton, we could consider perhaps outdoor live theatre and music in those natural amphitheatres which have been created by the old oil storage tanks when it was a BP area. Barry's Bay, a tourist information centre, a kiosk. In the pool, the North Sydney Pool, conventions, meetings, event centre in cooperation with Luna Park. These are just thought bubbles, just ideas which could be considered for both increasing revenue to council and also providing opportunity to business who, if they can make a profit, I'm sure wouldn't mind paying for the service that's offered. Perhaps we could also look at the question of the management of the property, the company concerned. I don't make any comment on the performance of that company, but perhaps it could be given consideration to ensure that we do have effective management of our properties and that they're achieving the maximum possible yield.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Again, I have some questions. If we just look on page 3 of 13, this is about the vacancies within council's property portfolio, and I'm getting information. We've got quite a lot of vacant properties, which is not good, but I've got no idea how long these properties have been vacant for. Could I just get a little bit of information just now, just on any of those? James Place, 1 James Place. There's two units there. Have they been vacant, what, months, years?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we would have to take that specific question on notice. Yeah.
Okay, could we? I think it would have been good to include that information in this table, quite frankly, because if we can see here, it says James Place, there's low office space demand currently in North Sydney. That's quite interesting. And if these have actually been vacant for a long time, why don't we put them to some other use? Councillors, first term councillors around here might know that in the last council, I found out that these entire rooms down in that little centre where La Campanina restaurant is, you know, down on the green there were these entire rooms at the back that had been vacant for about 5 years. Within a month, we turned them into temporary artist spaces for local artists, which, you know, we did that really quickly. If we've got properties sitting there that obviously aren't being used, maybe they could be we could think a little bit creatively and let those be used in an entirely different manner. So I'll leave that with you, General Manager. And if we could get some indication of the length of those vacancies for the next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Mutton.
It's a question of the General Manager through you, Mayor. It's when I look at the valuations given to the commercial properties, can we have confirmation that those valuations are arm's length market valuations? And if not, what's the methodology for the valuations?
Through you, Madam Mayor, they are arm's length valuations provided by our property managers at Colliers. And in the circumstance where, for example, where there is high vacancy in commercial property, in some instances we have had to negotiate lower lease fees for some of those properties in order to ensure that they don't become vacant. And that is certainly on the instruction of our property managers.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 10.11, Transport for New South Wales litigation. Councillor Berkey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the recommendation.
In the confidential.
Confidential as outlined in the.
Seconded by Councillor. Well, if you've got I'll put your amendment. I'll just get a different second then, in case Councillor Welsh, and then seek the amendment.
Sure, just to change the wording in accordance with the recommendation to no less than the amount contained within the report.
I'm happy to take that on board.
Yes. Councillor Mutton. No, if there's no further discussion, I put the item. All those in favour? And those against, that's carried unanimously. Item 10.12, the quotation assessment under contract 1, 2021.
I voted against.
Oh, sorry, it was carried with 1 against. Item 10.12, quotation assessment under contract 1, 2021. Is there a mover for the confidential item?
I'll move the confidential.
Moved by councillor Berrigan, seconded by councillor Welsh. Any discussion? I put the item. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. That brings us to the notice of motion. Councillor Gibson.
Yes, I will
Move it.
That's what I was about to do, Mayor. I'd like to move this motion.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Lapouris. Councillor Gibson.
Look, I'm not going to speak at length to this. I'll use my right of reply. But I just want to make sure that I want to reiterate that we're not here to think about which system we all prefer. This is about simply putting it out and asking the question, letting our residents have a say on this particular matter. And it is a very important matter, But I'm going to just use my right of reply here and let other councillors have a say.
Councillor Sandel.
Thank you, Mayor. I recall with great affection Councillor Mutton's intervention at council a few years ago, 3 years ago, I think it was, when this issue was last considered. There are some perhaps who say it was Churchillian in its wording. And I ask rhetorically, do we have a parliamentary or a presidential democracy in Australia? The answer, of course, and fortunately, is the former. And with good reason. With a presidential system and its associated concentration of power in one person, we run the risk of descent into a one-person autocracy, as we're perhaps witnessing in the United States at the moment. A directly elected mayor also adds one more councillor position, thus increasing council's financial outlay. Another cost would be the referendum itself, something in the order of $70,000, I believe. In North Sydney, we've had the current system in operation for the entire 134 years of our existence. This issue has already been put to the people in the 2016 referendum, at which they decided against a directly elected mayor. I can't say that in my consultation with our community, I have detected a groundswell in favour either of another referendum or for a change to the current voting system for councillors. I also believe that in most LGAs in New South Wales, mayors are appointed by their fellow councillors rather than by direct vote. While I'm on my feet, I would like to venture an opinion on the issue of the mayoral position being full-time. One argument for this is that the mayor's stipend is substantial and equivalent to a full-time salary for such a position. I'm afraid I find this hard to accept. Our mayor receives less than half the salary of a backbencher in the state parliament, who are also entitled to at least 3 members of staff. Given the mayor's duties, the stipend is laughably low, thus requiring the incumbent to have income elsewhere, either in the form of external employment or for persons such as myself in retirement with separate superannuation income. Hence the reason for most mayors in New South Wales being part-time, in my view. Let us please, therefore, under the current financial circumstances, dispense with debate over whether mayors, for that matter, any councillors, can afford to be appointed full-time or appointed directly.
Thank you, Councillor Mutton.
Thank you, Mayor. When I've previously spoken on these matters, I've referred to the Westminster system, and I've referred to a significant attribute of that system, which is that the houses elect their leader. And that's a way that they manage to progress their business. So I strongly hold the view that councillors should elect the mayor, not the community. But there's another aspect to it, and it's really concerned with referendum or referenda. All too often, legislative bodies get out of step with the community. And we see that when we have referendum, as we recently had with the Yes No campaign, where the advocates for the yes put forward an extremely strong case, supported by what appeared to be the majority of politicians, but quite clearly out of step with the community. I'm not expressing my view, I'm just simply expressing a situation where the community can live or be out of step with the legislators. So I welcome the notion that we have referendum. I welcome the idea that we turn to the community and we say, what are your views? And indeed, we perhaps could expand the area to say, well, what are your views on the number of wards we've got? What are your views on various other things? So I support the referenda idea, but I do not step back from my view that it is the House, our council, our councillors should select their leader. But having said that, when someone comes forward with a referenda question and says, let's go to the community, I support that. And I look at the cost. That is part of the cost of democracy. And that is part of the cost we should bear. So I support this motion, not because of my views on leadership for the council, because I encourage council hold referenda to ask its community what it truly thinks. It's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is one that I don't sit 100% in either camp, but it is something that I have considered over a significant period of time because I thought this question would come up at some stage. And so I've looked at the pros and cons. Ryde held a question on this and got 77%. It was a clear question, 77% in favour of directly elected. I thought our question was confusing that we asked a term or two ago. I thought it was somewhat confusing. And I'm in favour of the community having more of a say, more direct say in what we do. So I'm in favour of a referendum.
Thank you. Councillor Spencerley.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I tend to not be like, unlike Councillor Burke, trying to use a double negative again. I am torn on this issue. I think at the heart of it, we should be going out relatively regularly with clear, concise questions on referendum items as important as directly electing a mayor. I too thought the 2016 question was confusing, and I think many people did. The other thing is I do feel a swell of interest. I was, my first election, so everything was a bit new to me last election. And I found a number of people surprised and disappointed. In fact, the majority of people I spoke to surprised and disappointed that they couldn't vote for the mayor. So I'm torn because I think having a directly elected mayor allows for a populist mayor to come in to not necessarily make the right decisions or the right process. But I feel putting this question to our constituents is important, and voting against putting this question to our constituents is something I find difficult. So I think we may all have our own views on the best system for electing the mayor. We may have our own views on the best system for getting ourselves elected to mayor. But at the end of the day, I think this is a valid question to put to the constituents to find out what they really think, because I certainly found that there was a reasonable amount of surprise and disappointment that they couldn't vote directly for me.
Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting this referendum question for a number of reasons. Sorry, have you got something to say?
I was just saying, surprise, surprise.
Sorry, we'll ask you to keep order, please, and withdraw and apologise. Thank you, councillor Martin, for turning off your.
As a councillor who's now been under both system of the directly elected mayor and a mayor elected by the council, I can safely say that having a mayor directed by the council has resulted in a council which has a voice. As a councillor who was voted not to even be allowed to attend the council meeting on a motion of the mayor, the then mayor, and actually shut out from being able to represent her community that she had been elected to do so, was appalling. I will, apart from the reason that we went to the community on this only a matter of years ago, I will say that if you're worried about confusion from the last referendum question, I am not. Not one person has said to me, please bring back a directly elected mayor. What they have said to me is that it's wonderful to have a council which is so open, where people can come and speak at the council meeting, where we don't have 2 against and 2 for, and we don't have rules from the chair. In fact, the chair has actually moved from the throne up here, down here to be part of the council. But one of the issues here is cost. And I do find it amazing that every time a motion comes forward, it's about putting up costs. And in the last term of council, boy, did we put up costs. How many millions of costs have we put up by the decisions of that council on the North Sydney Olympic pool? And this clearly hasn't been thought through at all. Not only is there the cost of the referendum, there's the cost of the councillor allowance going further and further and further. And that is a cost at a time when a council is in a very, very difficult budget position, both from as we've just heard, difficulties with raising revenue. We have a rate peg, we have costs going up, we have huge loans, and now we're being asked on a whim to decide to have a referendum question, which effectively changes the wards. So what we're being asked for is a 4-year excuse.
Mayor, that's point of order. That's simply not correct.
I'm sorry, it is.
Councillor Gibson.
We can't give false information.
Well, it isn't. If you would allow councillor Beregi to continue, thank you.
So by adopting 11 councillor model, we can have no wards. 11 is a prime number. 11 is a prime number. It cannot be.
Councillor Gibson,
Councillor Beregi, as you know, point of order, Mayor, Councillor Beregi is giving out absolute false information before councillors vote. This is not a referendum question on the number of wards. That is a separate question, and anyone can put forward.
Thank you. It's not Councillor Gibson. I will rule on your point of order. You will sit down, please.
Okay.
You don't have a right to speak to it.
We can't spread
that length.
misinformation.
I'm ruling. I'm Councillor Gibson. I am ruling against it because.
And surprise again.
Again, I ask that you show respect to the chair, which is in your campaign of bullying and harassment of me. Councillor
apologise to me. You have the power and you bully and harass me.
No, Councillor Gibson,
me out every single time.
I do not, and I will not have you say so. Councillor Beregi is giving her expression. She is expressing her opinion. Listen, she is expressing her opinion as to the consequences of the proposed question. Continue, councillor Beregi.
Thank you, Mayor. The question being proposed is, do you support a popularly elected mayor where the voters of North Sydney elect the mayor for a 4-year term, thereby adopting an 11 councillor model? 11 councillors, 11 is a prime number. The only way that can operate is to have no wards at all.
Absolutely
not true. Councillor Gibson, would you again? I ask you to take your seat. You will have your right. You will have Councillor Gibson.
Absolutely.
You will have your right of reply.
False information.
You will have your right of reply.
Just
Councillor Gibson, you will have your right of reply. And again, I remind you of the Code of Meeting Practice that requires you to not speak when the chair is speaking. You flagrantly abuse that section at each council meeting, and I'm reminding you again. Councillor Beregi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So we would end up with a whole local government area, 11 councillors voted, or we would end up with 11 wards, which would be ridiculous as well. So that's the only way that 11 councillors can operate. 11 is not divisible by any number. It's called a prime number. I'm happy to Off they go. 2, 3, 5,
Again,
7,
Councillor
11,
Gibson, I call you
13,
to order.
17. They're all prime. You cannot. Well, 2 is a prime number. 2? Yes. Okay. We'll divisible by itself and 1, then we'll have the argument whether 1's a prime number. However, this is a loaded question which actually has more and more costs associated with it because it is not a well thought out question. So if you truly want to have another election and in a way bring it on, because I can tell you that the community out there are thrilled with this new council. They're thrilled with the positivity of this new council. They're thrilled that the council has taken what was with really a positive and attitude, and we're going to deliver a pool which was left to us, thank you very much, with a huge debt, and now we are seeking
I'm calling you to order. You are not to ridicule or make unfavourable personal remarks, and that is what you're attempting to do with this theatrical laughter. Others have listened to you. Others have listened to you with respect, and I'd ask that you extend that to others in the room. Thank you, Councillor Berrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. So now we're seeking to have a cost of a referendum, apparently another councillor, and that is in perpetuity, so that is a cumulative effect, and all the costs associated with a councillor. It's amazing that we really recommend that we shouldn't go down a councillor, but we didn't do that. And that could be an option if anybody wants to do that. But for this question, it is a poorly worded question, and I really think that if we're going to have a referendum on anything, this is not the number one topic that our community are debating in a housing crisis, in a cost of living crisis, when people can almost not afford to live anywhere, and we're debating something about ourselves. We're meant to be outward facing, not inward facing.
Thank you, Councillor Berrigan. Councillor Boris.
I'd just like to share, I get to speak with a lot of people in the community, and overwhelmingly, most of the people were very disappointed that they didn't get to vote for the mayor. Actually, everyone I've spoken to couldn't even believe that they couldn't get to vote for their mayor, and they thought it was ridiculous. Also, most of the people I've spoken to are not very pleased with this council, but that's just the people I've spoken to. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I give you a right of reply,
Can I propose an amendment, Mayor?
yes, if you can put forward an amendment.
Thank you. No, I think just off the back of Councillor Berrigan's valid points, I think one of the things that confused a lot of people at the last election as well was the constantly changing ward boundaries. I question why most people don't know what ward they're in. I mean, they come across every 4 years. They don't know where they are. I spent 2 weeks, with most of the councillors.
Well, there's a speech.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gibson, could you turn off your microphone?
Sorry.
What is your amendment?
My amendment is that we also propose a referendum to find out whether the constituents would like to remove ward boundaries and have one single LGA area.
That's a separate question.
Well,
Sure.
That's
part of my amendment. And that we reduce, I think in valid terms, is we reduce the number of councillors. So we have 8 councillors in total, effectively, 4 from each. And that creating a net saving.
So do you want to add those?
I don't know whether that's
questions
a
on?
valid, I mean, I think that's something worth putting to the
They're
community.
separate questions, but I agree with you.
Councillor Gibson, again, could I call you to order? You can have your right of reply shortly. Is there a seconder for the amendment?
But the
Council is seconded by Councillor
Well,
Laboris.
I'm happy to take those on. We can get some wording here together.
So you're now
That's not an
saying
issue to do it.
three questions.
Well, yes, I'll have to, but do you understand each question has a cost, councillor Spenceley?
Yes, I understand that, but I think the cost will be reduced each question. It's not going to be proportionate, and the
No,
cost will
look,
be made by saving the
I'm-
extra
I'm
councillor.
Absolutely, I'll take those on. And as I say, I was going to, when I had my right of reply, I was going to point out that it didn't have to be 11, that's going up 1. It can go down to 9. Absolutely, we can do. That's money.
Just as an item matter of procedure, could I suggest that you have a final report be brought to council with the final wording, so that that whatever is being, if this is successful, whatever is being put is clear, and has and
No,
we
can
also
do
have the
that now.
cost.
That's not reasonable, Mayor. We're voting on this now. We don't know if other councillors will be here. at the next meeting. And this is very clear. The question. I copied-
Okay, you've said you won't take that on. That's
No,
okay.
we do it
Before
now.
you have your right of reply,
We make
um,
3 questions.
no, counts, before you have your right of reply, I'm going to speak briefly, and that's on the matter of referenda. The whole referenda mechanism was introduced by Ted Mack, and it was based on the Swiss model. And the purpose of it was to allow the people to put forward referenda questions, not councillors. We have the ability to make decisions, and we have a voice as elected people. And so on that basis alone, the last time that the community considered this question, the referendum question was put forward by Willoughby Bay Precinct and supported by a number of precincts in the Combined Precinct Committee. The question of how to elect the mayor came from the people, and the referendum question was supported because it was an expression of a question from the people. Contrary to, and I understand your ambiguity, councillors Burke and Spencer, but contrary to the point you're putting, this is a question coming from elected people. The last time that we've only just had this new system of election in place for this term. And in the absence of a question coming from the people, from the community, rather than from a councillor by a notice of motion, and we have an absence of anyone here tonight speaking on behalf of the community in support of such a referendum question. And legitimately, with the cost of each referendum question being $75,000, 2 questions as you're proposing is $150,000. And there are much better ways to spend council's funds on providing services that are essential to our community. It would be a different matter if I thought that the community were had the impetus of this referendum question, but they don't. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. You're right. You're right. Councillor Burke. Yeah. Well, you spoke to it already.
To the amendment?
Oh, to the amendment.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question through you to the CEO. Is it feasible that it is cut down to, at present, what have we got, 2 questions or 3? Because I thought the second 2
No.
could be merged.
Yeah,
to,
but you
would
can't say 2A, it has to be an odd number.
Would you like to reduce the ward
It's got to be an odd
boundaries to
number.
have just one with X?
Yeah, it has to be 8 plus the mayor, so you have to, but the mayor's still a councillor, so you have to say no.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. The question was asked of the Chief Executive Officer by Councillor Burke.
The question was, can the second 2 be merged? Okay, so you've got 2 questions at the moment, but I guess what I'm trying to say here is, would you like to reduce the ward boundaries to have just one ward with X number of councillors
put it
could be
into-
merged into that to reduce the number of questions?
That would be
Yeah.
after.
Through you, Madam Mayor, what I would suggest to councillors when considering a referendum question is that it be given thought. And I say that because by putting 2 pieces into the one, I guess the question would be, would someone vote to, for example, have just one ward boundary, but they may not be happy with 8 councillors? I think this is typically why the question itself is quite important. So I would strongly recommend that if council is not clear on what its questions would be, that it does call for a report to come back.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other speakers?
Look,
Councillor Gibson, once again, I just ask you to respect the fact that when I'm speaking as chair, you would be silent. Are there any other, Councillor Lamb? Could you take your seat again? Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. I'd like to speak on the motion as a whole. I will be voting against it simply because we do not have the money to ask these questions, especially since said questions were asked in the last council, and I do not see how the answer could have changed so drastically in such a short time frame. Also, I myself looked into referendums for a possibility of better communication with the community, as I believe we only have communication with a small amount of our general population. I asked about questions such as doing that when I was first elected almost 2 years ago, and then I was quickly told it's ridiculously expensive and simply not worth it unless it's a truly vital situation. This is not. And such, there are many, I'm happy to say as well, there are many better ways of communicating with the people these days. We just have employed a communications officer that I'm happy to tell is doing amazing things in the works. We do have a communication problem with the people of our area, but there are so many better fiscal ways of communicating, especially in our current situation with the pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Councillor Gibson, your right of reply, and then we'll put the motion.
And if we just pull the motion up again, because I think councillor Spenceley hasn't understood, we've got to make it an odd number.
Can I ask through
Yes,
the
yes, we do, because last time what happened?
Mayor, the General Manager?
Councillor
Last
Gibson,
time.
Councillor Gibson, could you call you to order? Councillor Spenceley has a question. of the Chief
Two
Executive.
questions, Mayors. My understanding is it's not $73,000 per
No.
question, it's $73,000 to hold a referendum, and that a second question would be maybe an incremental cost rather than each additional question would be 73,000. So I'd be interested to find the factual answer on that if we could.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we may have to take that question on notice because they may be considered two separate questions. I'm sorry, I don't have the answer.
Okay. And the second question is, there seems to be confusion around the table about the required number of councillors and how the mayor interrelates with that. Could we clarify, please, in a system where the mayor is elected separately, what is the requirement for an even number or an odd number? If there's 2 wards or a single ward, what would be the?
The mayor's still a councillor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor
Through
Gibson.
you, Madam Mayor, typically in councils which have popularly elected mayors and therefore are elected separate to the council, in the event you had 2 wards, you would have 2 equal number of councillors and then an elected mayor on top.
So that would, okay,
Yeah, it's
that
gotta
would be like,
one.
in the case of the 11, it would be, okay.
Sorry, Councillor.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So if there's 1 ward, because aren't we discussing changing to 1 ward?
To 9 councillors in 1 ward would be the question.
Well, no, would we need an odd number? You just said we need an odd number if we have 2 wards, so we would have 4 and 4 plus 1.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I gave the example of if you had 2 wards, as you do now. If you were not to have wards, it's a matter for council as to how many councillors it would like to put forward in a referendum, whether that be 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a matter for council.
So one of those councillors could be mayor,
Yes.
or would be the popularly elected mayor.
Through
so
you,
I understand.
through you, Madam Mayor, just to be very clear,
Right.
if it was a popularly elected mayor situation, there would be a mayor, there would be an election for a mayor as separate to the election for the councillors. So you would have a number of councillors plus you would have a mayor.
Yes, but you could have 7 councillors plus the 8th. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Finally, we're going to Councillor Gibson and her right of reply.
We just want to see what we've got it up here with ... So see, councillor Spencer, we need to,
Could we see the motion?
We'll ask her question.
He's asking to ask a question. Sorry, of the
well, you need to put your light on, don't you?
Yeah.
And just not just lean over and ask the mayor.
Okay, again, Councillor Gibson, would you show respect
Jeez.
in the room? Thank you.
Your
Again.
assistant chair
Well,
is.
no, and again, that I'm asking you to withdraw and apologise. There is no assistant chair. That is to impugn me and to abuse Councillor Beregi.
Councillor
Again,
Beregi,
I'm
but
asking
these are
you to withdraw and
few
apologise.
things.
There is
We
no
don't have that
need
privilege.
for you to conduct
We
a
don't have
debate
that
in the
privilege.
way in which you do. Thank you,
I don't
Councillor.
think it's appropriate.
Again,
Councillor
Councillor Gibson, once again, I as chair am speaking and you are not silent. Councillor Beregi, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. To the General Manager, to the Chief Executive Officer. But in relation to ward boundaries, my understanding is that it goes through the Boundaries Commission, and the Boundaries Commission must consult on any changes to ward boundaries, and that must go out to community consultation. And if that is the case, then that is a considerable cost. So this question
consultation
couldn't really be
happens.
asked in that fashion because in terms of having the question, which is, would you like to reduce the ward boundaries to have just one ward with whatever councillors? That would have to go through Boundaries Commission and a consultation and couldn't be adopted through a referendum.
It's not.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the question in relation to changing from a number of wards to a different number of wards can be put forward through a referendum. What can't be put forward at this point is if we were to change the boundaries. So for example, you know, where you have your current boundaries, if you wanted to change them north, south, east, west, you couldn't do that at this point. That would have had to be October 2023.
And just a follow-up question then. So the only, we will be changing the boundaries though,
No,
if we go to one ward because there'll be no boundaries.
there's no that.
Section 6.
No.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's a difference between changing the number of wards as opposed to changing the boundaries of existing wards.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson, your right of reply.
So, council.
Point of order, Mayor, I'm not sure we've actually dealt with the
No, we've got to put
amendment.
your number. No.
Well, councillor Gibson said she would take it on board,
Okay. she has.
so it's part of the motion.
Yeah, but we have to get we haven't got.
Can we just get the ...
Yeah.
to?
We are you happy to put 9 in there, councillor Spenceley? Because it has to
No,
be-
because I wanted to reduce the cost, so
Yeah.
8 councillors,
Well,
and then
I would
with a
say
popular elected
11.
mayor.
So if we go to 9, that is reducing the cost.
Would it be 8 plus a popular elected mayor if
Yeah,
one was
but-
passed?
Okay, we're now having a debate across the floor.
I just think councillor
Excuse me,
Spenceley, if
councillor
it's fine,
Gibson,
copy the
councillor
councillor
Gibson,
Spenceley.
it's in the motion.
Yeah.
You either take it on
Yeah.
as proposed by the mover, or we will formally then have an amendment with the number that councillor Spenceley is proposing. So councillor Spenceley is moving an amendment that would you like to reduce the ward boundaries to have just one ward with 8 councillors. That
And
would
you also need
include
plus the mayor. Because see, what councillor Spenceley
Okay,
doesn't
again,
understand,
Councillor Councillor Gibson.
it's
Coun-
just mayor and
Councillor
a
Gibson,
councillor.
again, I'm calling you to order.
Yeah, but you've tried to
Councillor
be
Gibson, I'm
quick.
calling you to order.
Oh,
Your
James, just
Coun-
think about it.
Councillor Gibson, I'm calling you to order. You either accept it as worded by councillor Spenceley or you don't. Do you accept the wording that councillor Spenceley has put to you?
Would you like to reduce the ward boundaries to just one ward with 8 councillors plus the mayor? Can we add that on, James? Just so, because this is not going
I
to.
think councillor Spenceley wants 7 councillors plus the mayor.
Oh, you want 7 plus the mayor? Oh, well, let's say that then. That wasn't clear. 7 councillors plus the mayor. Yep.
And you, councillor Gibson, do you take that on?
Well, I'm just
At the
reading
mayor.
it. Just let me read it, Mayor. We don't have long meetings anymore. Let's not rush. Would you like to reduce the ward boundaries to just one ward?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I still think we should have these as separate questions.
Yeah.
We just haven't.
Okay, I'm going to cut through this in terms of process. Councillor Gibson either takes this on as it is written now.
I'm still reading
No,
it.
well.
I'm still reading it.
Or councillor Spenceley, if you wish to have 3 questions, I suggest that you put an amendment with all 3.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose a procedural motion that the motion be put.
Well, that's not reasonable. We haven't discussed.
Well,
it.
and I'm
Well, we have to
prepared to
vote.
take that on if we actually have a motion either accepted by councillor Gibson or not.
No, so I'm just still reading it. What the rush, Mayor? We have a meeting every 2 weeks with.
Again,
Yeah,
On
let's
reflection,
not
could
rush.
I just move that we ask for a report on this, because I think this is.
okay, so
this is-
there's an amendment from councillor Spenceley asking for a further report on appropriate wording of questions.
Questions, cost,
Questions,
and requirement to councillor Berry's point, if there's any requirements.
questions,
about-
cost and process.
Of reducing the number of councillors, have a popular elected mayor, and thereby, I mean, these are only just questions, right? We're not proposing to do any of these things. I'd like to understand the cost to question the community.
Yeah.
And put these questions for them to decide.
Costs and process.
I'll take that on then. But when it's,
So and process in relation to the following proposed referendum questions. and then cut and paste
Yep.
one
Popular elected mayor.
and two.
One ward and
Yeah.
number of councillors.
So that a further report be provided to council in relation to the appropriate question, wording, costs and process in relation to the following proposed referendum questions
next
and then
meeting.
1 and 2.
Put it at,
Okay.
we need these answers at the next meeting though.
To be prepared for the next meeting.
Yeah. To be
That a
prepared for
further
next meeting.
report be provided to the next meeting of council.
Is it, can I ask if that's feasible? For
Yeah.
the general manager?
Through Madam Mayor, yes.
In relation to. Okay, so that was taken on by councillor Gibson. Second, and the seconder, councillor Lapouris, you happy to take that on as seconder?
And
Thank
I'd
you.
now like to speak.
Now you
to
have
it.
your
Thank
right
you.
of reply.
Yeah, thank you. I think what, now I can, we got into problems with the last question, with the last referendum question. And it actually, we had to spend a lot of money on legal advice because we had 3 wards and we were trying to divide 10 councillors into 3 wards. So that was problematic. So what the essential point is here, councillor Spenceley, is the mayor is also a councillor. Did you all know you get paid a mayoral salary and a councillor salary? You're actually a mayor and a councillor. So if you say 8 councillors, that's different than, so you have to have, if it's 2 wards, you have to have an odd number because you're voting for councillors and the mayor. The mayor is also a councillor. So you've just got to be careful with the wording.
I think, point of order, I think this is what the report will
Yeah.
deliver to us in
Yeah,
terms
but
of.
it's essential.
Yep.
This is what we're here for. And
Well, I
you
think
know,
now the question is,
yeah,
Thank you.
our community are watching, but this is why I come to council rather than, you know, we don't have very long meetings. Let's talk about it and debate it. It's important to ask this question. And I'm frankly really surprised by some of the comments around this room, particularly from a councillor who I know is an accountant, about the cost of the referendum. The same councillors who were just questioning the cost of asking these really important questions just voted to put up fees and charges with you know, with not a, with
Point
not
of
a
order,
thought,
we
with not a
voted to
thought.
put it on draft
Oh,
exhibition.
we'll put it on draft exhibition,
that's
but you're
incorrect.
still agreeing with it, you're still agreeing with it.
No,
Sorry,
So,
point of order.
I'm going to rule on your point of order. I understand what it is. Councillor Gibson, again, I've asked you to withdraw and apologise. What you said was inaccurate. Thank you. Continue with your right of reply.
So councillors just voted to put up fees and charges.
Again, no, councillors
Well,
did not do
we've
that.
invited to send it out to consultation. Okay, fair enough. All right. So, and then councillor Berry, you also said that this is, if we make a decision, this is in perpetuity. Simply not true. We can ask a referendum question every election. And I think we should be doing that. We should
Point
be
of order,
doing that.
Mayor.
It's money well
I said
spent.
that it was perpetuity because the fees payable to councillors, if we increased number of councillors, is in
Okay.
perpetuity.
As long as
Councillor,
we can change at the
Berry.
next meeting. The last question was really poorly worded and caused absolute total confusion out in the electorate. And the result passed by just a very small amount, but people were totally confused. And we'll go to the mayor's point. This is just coming from a councillor, not the community. I'm sorry, Mayor, and I invite you down to have coffee in Kirribilli. We'll set a date. Come down and talk to residents in Kirribilli. They are saying to me, we want a popularly elected mayor again. The mayor seems to think, or you're sort of, I'm getting the impression that it's only if it comes from a precinct that it's relevant. Sorry, I'm in
Again, I'm
Kirribilli
going to call
most
you to
days.
order because that's mischaracterising anything that I said.
Well, you said it came from a precinct. Sorry, this motion.
I
this
said the
hasn't
fact
come
of
from
how
me.
the last
All right.
one came.
Well, this hasn't come from
Exactly.
me. This has come from the community that I represent. I'm in Kirribilli every day. I'm out and about. I walk everywhere, and people are constantly saying to me, we want a popularly elected mayor again. How did this happen? So this is not coming from me. This is coming from the people I represent and the people I talk to, which are an enormous amount of people. So this is, we'll get the information on this, but any idea that we shouldn't ask this question is simply ridiculous. Councillors, the community have had a popularly elected mayor since Ted Mack times, right up until this recent council, and you know now they've got a chance to see how it works they've seen how it works under both systems, and they're two entirely different systems, and we need to ask the question. And quite frankly, for those councillors that spoke against it, if you think this system is so good, if you're really sure about it, why are you scared to put it out there to the public? If you're really sure about something, it's great to get that affirmation from the community. Put it out there, and then you know, if people agree with you, then that's fantastic. And I will say, well, that's money well spent, and you'll say it's money well spent. And I really appreciate Councillor Burke, and it's one reason I really appreciated Councillor Burke as deputy, because he doesn't just vote as he's supposed to vote.
Okay, again, that's your 5 minutes. Councillor Gibson, again, you are once again impugning improper motives of others. So if you would sit down.
I was just again, I'll just finish my sentence, Mayor, or I'll put it to the floor that I can be given a chance to just finish my sentence. I was congratulating Councillor Burke on having a mind of his own. I don't think that insults him.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gibson. If you would take your seat, I'm going to put the motion. I'm going to put the motion. All those, again, I call you to order. All those in favour? Those against? That is I'm going to use, it's tied. I'm going to use my casting vote in favour of the status quo, which is I will vote against. So that is not carried. Thank you. And thank you all for your participation. That's the end of the meeting.
Oh dear.